My name is Lucinda and I'm a Writing Services peer helper. Today I'm going to talk to you about writing clearly. You may wonder what the importance of writing clearly is at the university level. You always want to make sure in your writing that you're making sure that your ideas are clear to the reader. You also want to ensure that you're communicating what you want without organizational or grammatical errors distracting from the subject matter. You also want to ensure that your writing aligns with university level expectations. So, you're probably familiar with the sandwich metaphor or the burger metaphor from your high school English classes. But today we're going to adapt this metaphor so that it confirms with university level expectations. So, when you're writing a paragraph, you want to make sure that the top bun of your burger is your topic sentence. So your topic sentence is the point or topic that is the main focus of the paragraph. Always remember that each one of your paragraphs should only focus on one main thing. Next, you have your toppings. With paragraph structure, you want to make sure that each one of your paragraphs focuses on a different topic. So the format within your paragraph after the topic sentence is point, evidence, and explanation. Point is also known as your topic sentence, and that's the mini argument that supports part of your main argument, like your thesis statement. Then you'll have evidence, which is supporting your thesis statement. The explanation that follows highlights how this evidence relates back to the thesis argument and/or the topic sentence, or in other words, how it relates back to your point. When you're writing an essay, you're going to have several paragraphs, each focusing on their own topic that relates back to the thesis. We can follow this structure when considering the second topping and the third topping or more. Remember that you're not constrained to just 3 body paragraphs when you're writing at the university level. Next, we have the bottom bun. So the bottom bun could be the explanation, which we've already talked about, or in other words, stating the significance of the section or paragraph back to the thesis statement, or we can have something called a transition sentence. Transition sentences are very important because they link one idea to the next. Transition sentences are usually at the end of one paragraph or at the beginning of another paragraph. I usually like to put my transition sentences at the end of my paragraphs because I don't want to distract from the topic sentence in the following paragraphs. But you can do whatever best suits your needs. Transition sentences clearly communicate that you are transitioning from one idea to the next. So depending on the focus of your essay or other assignment, you would use different transition words. Some examples of transition words are similarity, also in the same way, likewise, similarly. This would be when you're comparing 2 alike ideas in the body paragraphs. You could also have exception or contrast, where you're contrasting one idea in one body paragraph to the next. Some examples of these words are but, nevertheless, in spite of. If the next paragraph in your essay is an example to what you were talking about in the preceding paragraph, you could use transition words like, for instance, specifically, to illustrate. Lastly, you could have cause and effect. And some of the transition words you could use for this are accordingly, consequently, so, and thus. Another way to make sure that you're writing clearly is an organizational strategy called known to new. The premise of this strategy is that sentences should begin with ideas that stem from the preceding sentence, and then each following sentence develops or adds on to the idea that is the focus of the first sentence. So basically, you're using information that the reader has already read to continue on your thought to introduce new information. So in this paragraph, I use some highlighting to show known to new. In the first example sentence, we can see that the person ends it with, cloning is morally repugnant. Then they continue on by saying, the repugnance arose. So they're using information that is already known to the reader to introduce new information concerning human autonomy. The last example that I want to talk about to make sure that you're writing clearly is wordiness. In high school, you probably were taught to use a lot of, descriptive language. But in university, it's important that you are staying clear and concise in your writing. One way to do this is to eliminate unnecessary words. For example, using multiple adjectives to describe one concept. Maybe pick or choose the best adjective that you know that you're using correctly to describe the phenomena you're talking about instead of using multiple. Finally, I wanted to end with some tips. Avoid using academic jargon that you're not familiar with. You want to make sure that you are using language correctly in the right context. If there's a new word or phrase that is introduced in your course materials that you feel comfortable using, that's completely fine, but just try not to overuse unfamiliar words. Remember, as I've said before, that each paragraph should focus on one main idea only. Another tip that you might not feel comfortable with is to read your work out loud to catch grammatical errors and ensure that paragraphs flow. It might seem a little silly, but this truly does help you to catch things that you wouldn't be aware of if you were just reading in your head. This kind of relates to the first tip, but don't be afraid to be precise. Avoid ambiguous terminology and overused words or expressions. And lastly, read your work out loud to a friend and see if it makes sense to them based on your own organizational structure. I hope that you've enjoyed this presentation, and feel free to contact Writing Services if you have any further questions or book a writing appointment.